Welcome to the Human Upgrade Project, the show where science meets self-optimization. I'm your host, Ultimate Biohacker 10X, and here we break down the real research, real data, and real dosing behind modern biohacking, from compounds and peptides to techniques, devices, lifestyle strategies, and performance protocols. Whether you're exploring longevity molecules, recovery tools, nootropics, metabolic optimization, or cutting-edge wellness tech, this is your trusted source for evidence-based insights, without the hype. Let's unlock human potential, one pathway at a time. Now we're taking a deeper dive into one of the most requested topics in the peptide world, BPC-157 dosing in research settings. But before we begin, let me be clear. This is for educational and informational purposes only. BPC-157 is not FDA approved, and there is no official human dosing protocol. What I'm sharing with you today is drawn from preclinical research, scientific literature, and the patterns documented in animal models. We want to understand the framework behind dosing, the why, not the how much. So let's get into it. Why dosing for BPC-157 is unique. One of the most important things to understand about BPC-157 is that, unlike many peptides, it's incredibly stable, bioactive, and it shows systemic effects even at very low exposure in animal models. That means that dosing isn't just a question of quantity, but it's also a question of delivery method, frequency, tissue target, timing, and biological environment. Researchers consistently observe two things. BPC-157 works at a remarkably small concentration, and its effects are heavily influenced by where and how it is administered. So when people ask, what's the dose? The real question is, what's the context? Delivery methods studied in research. Let's talk delivery, because dosing doesn't really matter if delivery is mismatched. We have the oral form. This is used heavily in gut studies. It protects and stabilizes the GI tract, supports mucosal integrity, and withstands stomach acid well due to its natural origin in the gastric proteins. Most GI-focused research uses oral exposure. Subcutaneous injections. This is the delivery used most often in musculoskeletal research. Studies target ligaments, tendons, muscle tears, post-op healing. They often use localized or systemic subcutaneous exposure and injection. Systemic administration. Some studies use low-dose systemic delivery when the goal is organ protection, neuroprotection, or full-body inflammation reduction. Each route interacts differently with the body, so the type of research determines the delivery method. Factors that influence dosing and research. Let's talk about what affects dosing requirements. Well, we have the target tissue. In the gut, an oral form shows strong activity. Tendon and ligaments, localized delivery supports targeted repair. Brain and nerves, systemic exposure in models shows neuroprotective activity. The severity of the injury, acute injuries behave differently from chronic degeneration. We've got the biological state of the subject, inflammation, hydration, sleep, general health. They all influence healing responsiveness to these peptides. We've got duration versus intensity. BPC-157 tends to follow a low-dose, steady exposure pattern in research. Think of it as a signal reinforcement, not a force. In addition, BPC is used in combination with other interventions such as red light therapy, mobility, sleep, collagen, omega-3s. These all change the recovery environment. I like to think of it as a healing soup. The researchers constantly find that environment influences effectiveness as much as dosage does, and that's why a one-size-fits-all doesn't exist with this particular compound. Research timing and frequency. Researchers are often less focused on how much and more focused on how often. So here's the general pattern shown across studies. Consistent exposure matters. BPC-157 supports angiogenesis, which is the formation of new blood vessels, and growth factor signaling, and these are slow and steady processes. Timing depends on the target. Gut studies often involve ongoing exposure. Tendon studies typically look at repeated exposure through the recovery window, and organ protection studies often use pre and post exposure timing. Peaks aren't necessary. Unlike stimulatory compounds, you're not trying to spike the body, you're just supporting a healing environment. So, oral versus injectable. What does the research show? Let's compare them. Oral BPC-157 has strong gut effect, full body benefits observed even via the GI route. It's got good stability in the stomach acid, useful in systemic inflammation models. How about injectable? Injectable BPC-157 is used for tendon, ligament, and muscle studies. It's got a faster exposure to systemic circulation, and it's more targeted and localized research designs. Now, neither method is better. They're simply tools for different research goals. Well, how about common misconceptions? There definitely are a few big myths around BPC-157 dosing. Myth number one, more equals better. Actually, research suggests that diminishing returns and no advantage to going with high dose. Myth number two, it's only useful if injected locally. This is absolutely false. Systemic effects appear in multiple organ and brain models. Myth number three, it replaces good recovery habits. Let me tell you, nothing replaces sleep, hydration, nutrition, and mobility. I look at these peptides as being an adjunct to a healthy lifestyle. The healthier we live, the more beneficial they're going to be. Myth number four, it's a miracle cure. Well, it's powerful, but it works by supporting natural repair processes. It doesn't override them. Safety, quality, and regulation. Well, here's the most important real-world note. Quality over quantity. Research-grade peptides must be pure, verified, and free of contaminants. There is no benefit to high dosing, and there is potential risk in contaminated product. Purity, storage, handling, and sourcing matter far more than quantity. So the real takeaway on dosing? If you take away one thing from this episode, let it be this. BPC-157 works through consistency, not intensity. It activates angiogenesis, cellular repair growth factors, nitric oxide pathways, gut protection, inflammation regulation. These systems do not respond to massive spikes. They respond to stability, environment, and biological balance. So if we get into the general dosing guidelines, this is where we can sort of set a framework, although as I mentioned before, it's going to be somewhat individualized for researchers. A common daily dosage range would be 200 to 1,000 micrograms, often starting at 250 to 500 micrograms to assess tolerance. Subcutaneous injection under the skin, preferably in the abdomen or in a localized area of tissue where there's an injury that's being targeted, would be the preferential route of administration. Sometimes for targeted musculoskeletal repair, you can go deeper into the muscle. Obviously, as I mentioned before, for gut inflammation or gut issues, it would be taken orally. If we look at a body weight adjustment, roughly 2.5 to 3.75 micrograms per kilogram split up twice a day, which would be equivalent to somewhere in the 200 to 300 microgram for an 80 kilogram person. It doesn't really need to be cycled, but the people that are cycling it will do 2 to 12 weeks on, followed by 2 to 8 weeks off to prevent tolerance. As I said before, I think this happens more with some of the other peptides and secretagogues. Whether or not you do it once a day or twice a day is really just preferential for the user or researcher. As far as monitoring goes, track your symptoms, taper doses for longer cycles. You might be able to reduce it as you see improvements in symptoms. Now that that's said, let's see if I can go through a few different basic treatment plans to outline the thinking behind these. So for tendon, ligament, joint, musculoskeletal injuries, sprains and strains and tears, we would do 250 to 500 micrograms once or twice a day, maybe up to 750 micrograms for severe cases, sub-Q or IM near the injury site, cycle 2 to 6 weeks, and if it's severe post-op, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. You should expect this to promote collagen synthesis, faster recovery. You obviously combine it with rest, physical therapy, good diet, and so on and so forth. For muscle tears, strains, and overtraining in a recovery type of a setting, we're looking at 200 to 500 micrograms once or twice a day, subcutaneous or IM. Again, 2 to 4 weeks, maybe extended to 6 weeks if needed. And this is going to support muscle regeneration. And of course, we might want to consider stacking that with TB500 or TB4. The effects can be noticeable pretty quickly. When we're looking at gut health, like ulcers, IBS, leaky gut, IBD, Crohn's disease, the inflammatory conditions, 250 to 1,000 micrograms once to twice a day. Start at maybe 500 micrograms split dose. It can be an oral capsule or sublingual on an empty stomach. And that cycles 4 to 8 weeks. This would target, mucosal repair. Obviously, you want to avoid NSAIDs and alcohol during the use of this because they are pro-inflammatory. Inflammation and pain management, like arthritis, joint pain, chronic inflammation, that is a 250 to 750 microgram dose. It's completely user dependent. Start low, go slow. Do this one subcutaneous near the affected joint or area. Treatment would be 4 to 8 weeks and reassess for dosage adjustment in about 4 weeks. This would be expected to reduce the cytokines in the area, should give quick pain relief within hours to days, and in some models you can see long-term relief by cycling this way. Neurological and nerve repair, for instance, nerve damage, neuroprotection, TBI, stroke recovery, 200 to 500 micrograms once a day, subcutaneous. It does not need to be at an injury site, 4 to 12 weeks duration, maybe longer for something chronic. And we're targeting the supporting of angiogenesis and nerve regeneration. And this may add to the brain-gut axis. I would consider using this in conjunction with some other modalities and other peptides. Post-surgical healing, say after you had orthopedic or soft tissue surgery, maybe 500 to 1,000 micrograms daily, sub-Q or IM near the surgical site, 4 to 6 weeks minimum, and then taper off. We should expect to hopefully accelerate wound closure and possibly have angiogenesis and some of the other benefits of BPC-157. So, kind of to wrap this up, as a beginner, start low, 250 micrograms a day, oral for gut, sub-Q for injuries, 1 to 2 weeks, then adjust based on response. You can stack. Maybe we pair it with TB500 or TB4, which would be at 2 to 5 milligrams a week. This would be for enhanced tissue repair, maybe GHK copper for anti-aging effects. There are a bunch of other things with GHK copper, which we'll get into in another episode. What are the side effects? They're rare and mild: nausea, dizziness, sight redness. If it's severe, obviously you just want to discontinue this. It's banned by WADA for athletes. Obviously, we want to ensure sterility for injections, get it from a reputable supplier. And as far as this year, it's late 2025, research is ongoing. So you want to stay up to date on this and seek counsel from scientists and other providers that are utilizing these compounds so that you can get the most current information possible. Thanks for listening to the Human Upgrade Project. If you found value in today's episode, share it with someone who's ready to elevate their biology. Make sure to follow the show for weekly deep dives into peptides, protocols, devices, lifestyle strategies, and the science of high-performance longevity. Until next time, stay curious, stay optimized, and stay 10x.